Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you as always. So today we're back with another Disney episode. I think it's Disney Part 8 now, so we're over halfway through, thank God. And we've got a good slate of films coming up today, guys. I'm really excited for this one, so I'm going to pass over to Callum to explain what movies we're going to be talking about today. So Callum, off to you, buddy.
Yeah, so we've been doing this series. We've been on this endeavor for maybe 45 years. And we're finally reaching the quality Disney films. We trudged through the shit that were the package films. We had a few glimpses of potential with The Rescuers and
Sure.
in my opinion, The Black Cauldron, in your opinion, Winnie the Great the fuck what the fuck it was called, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, who gives a shit? More like Winnie the Pooh, am I right? Uh, you know,
Fuck's sake.
so today, we're on this some absolute bangers. These are the ones that are always referred to as the beginning of the Disney Renaissance. In most people's opinion, it started with The Little Mermaid, and then it was carried on through Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King. So we'll be talking about those three films today, but starting with The Rescuers Down Under, which is sort of underappreciated. You don't hear much about it, but I had absolutely no issues with it. So did you have any thoughts about any of those today?
Well, man, it's the first time I think we've reviewed a Disney sequel so far, isn't it? With the Rescuers Down Under, I don't think we've uh, reviewed any other ones. Can you think of any?
Yeah, no, this is the first ever Disney animated sequel.
Awesome, yeah. Well, you know what? These films, like the only one I'd watched as a kid was Lion King, and the other three was my first time viewing. What about yourself, dude?
Yeah, I'd never seen any of these, which I'd always considered myself a bit of a film connoisseur. Definitely getting stronger in the recent days. With watching some of the older classic films, but I
Sure.
would have expected myself to have seen a lot of the classic animated films because I had the VHS player. I had
Yeah.
some Disney films, but weirdly, I just somehow looked over some of the greatest classics. I'd seen Basil the Great Mouse Detective, and that was pretty much one of the only older Disney films I've ever seen. But I passed over these for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's weird because a lot of Disney films, I guess, like there are quite passable films. Like I think Disney is very much the thing. Like you were either a Disney kid or you weren't, and there were a lot of good studios at the time as well. Like DreamWorks were doing great things, sort of late 90s, early 2000s. So maybe that was why I don't know. I was sort of the same as well, buddy, to be honest with you. But just before we crack on with this episode, thank you to everyone who has supported us recently. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on these four films down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any questions or podcast suggestions, email us at moviematespodcast@gmail.com. That is always in the description. So, Callum, shall we crack on with the Rescuers Down Under then, buddy?
Yes, and this film, as we previously mentioned, I think this pretty much is going to crack two records. It's the first ever Disney animated sequel, and probably the shortest review on Movie Mates, because
Perhaps.
I have 3 points. And I will say right up, I did not pay attention whatsoever to this film. I was making a CV whilst I was watching it. We'd recently got our A level results, so I was just making
See,
some
when you told me
touches.
that off pod, I thought you meant you had a lot of notes for this film, so you're writing like a really long lengthy review. I didn't think you were actually writing a CV.
No, no, I literally meant I was just mocking up a CV. Yeah, uh, you know, I'm looking for work. A bit desperate.
Love it,
So
man.
yeah,
Love it.
I thought that was probably a more important endeavor than watching this film. But I think the reason that I decided to cease paying attention to this was after hearing the lack of Australian accents and then the attempts at Australian accents, both of which are fucking shocking.
Absolutely. I'd written the same thing, buddy. Australia is such a great setting for any movie. We've talked about it before with Finding Nemo and not maybe not so much Finding Dory, Finding Nemo. The Australian setting, and that in many ways that is an Australian film. But here, it just the Australian accents and lack thereof are absolutely embarrassing. It's shameful.
Why did they ever choose to set these films outside of America and then just plonk American actors in the film?
I don't know, man.
This film does not fundamentally change in any way if you make this some sort of nature reserve in America. It's
Mhm,
it's an
mhm.
identical film.
Oh,
I think they
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
want this sort of like worldwide scope, but they're too chicken shit to hire appropriate actors.
No, that's so true, man. It's so true. And like I said, I think Australia is a very good setting for this sort of film, like the outback and the poacher theme that they're going for, but they just missed the mark with the accents. And it sort of feels like, even the opening 10 minutes alone, like it feels like they decided to set the film in Australia and then complete every single Australian stereotype. Like this kid in the room has posters of kangaroos and stuff like that. There's a lot of Australian stereotypes. I'd imagine if I was an Australian kid watching this, I'd be like, oh, this is getting a bit annoying. Or this is all anyone ever thinks when they go to Australia or they see Australia in the media. So, I thought that was a little lazy. But that being said, I thought this was a very interesting turn for the movie to take. The sequel, like it's refreshing in many ways.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. There are certainly errors in that regard, but
Hmm.
I have to say the most underrated Disney romance of all time is Bianca and
I'd
Bernard.
agree. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I'd never even heard of like these characters, but their romance is so wholesome and sweet and unproblematic. And it was an odd decision, I think, to sort of see like Bernard's jealousy, thinking that Bianca was going to leave him for this sort of like stereotypical Aussie bloke. I never saw that as a possibility because she seems like a very upstanding, high moral person.
sure.
So I never considered that that was ever a risk.
Hmm.
But you hear about the princes and the princesses, or you hear about Mulan and her romantic interest. There's these very iconic couples, but
Sure.
I'd honestly never heard of this pairing.
I agree. They're quite underrated in that sense. And yeah, yeah, I have it here in my notes again. The Bianca and Bernard dynamic, it's fantastic. It's so well done. And Bob Newhart, he's such a great voice actor as well as a real life actor. So credit to him. And I think in terms of animation, I really think they nailed like the eagle animation here. It's so lifelike, even in its movements and stuff. And it's fantastic. And just the animation in general, like when the first film, I think it was like 77 it came out. If you watch them back to back, I'd imagine there'd be a very stark contrast between animation. That's just gone up a level.
Yeah, definitely. But Matthew, we quite enjoyed the character of Medusa in the first film, the villain of that film.
Sure.
Uh, what did you think of this villain? Uh, Again, I paid so little attention. I have no idea what his name was.
No, me neither.
But
I just called him the poacher.
I have to say, this is one of the most animal influenced films. Without just being like Robin Hood, which is exclusively animals. That this is like a nice balance between animals and humans, where the animals are the leads.
Sure.
So I did think that a franchise where that is a huge aspect, a poacher seems like a very appropriate villain choice.
Hmm.
Again, no idea what his name was. I think it was like O'Hearth or some shit like that.
I have
It was
no idea what
something.
his name was.
It was something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think
But
I think the poacher aspect is it's a very dark theme to explore, and I respect the film for that. Like it's a good idea, but he's not really in the film for that huge amount of time, to be honest. And he kind of seems crazy for the sake of being crazy, in a sense. Like the filmmakers gotta it's got to make me think like they kind of needed a villain for adults and kids to despise. So they just went for a really crazy poacher who nearly kills the kid. So fair enough. Like, but it's a dark theme. It's certainly a dark theme to explore. But I don't know. It sort of it does in many ways. It feels like it feels like a different sort of movie than the first one, I suppose. And maybe that's down to the setting. I don't know, but it feels very different.
yeah, I never really understood his motivations because I mean that may well be they said them and I didn't hear them. But from what I understood, he killed the male counterpart, the
Yeah,
mate
of the
of the
eagle.
female eagle.
Hmm.
So he seemed more like a hunter in that he wants to go after her because that's the biggest game possible. He wants to be the one that killed one of those animals. But he's already done that.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, I
yeah,
suppose there's
yeah.
a financial element, but I mean, who wants to buy an eagle carcass? Is anyone interested in that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a similar theme that like there of Gaston and Beauty and the Beast. But yeah, like you said, he's already, you know, conquered that original goal of his, to kill one of the eagles. So, and yeah, like it doesn't seem like that financially successful, to be honest. But I don't know. I don't think I'd ever understand the goals of poachers, to be honest with you, buddy.
Yeah, no, I've never been one to hunt myself.
Yeah,
Have you, Matthew? You've done
just
a
a bit
bit
of
of
fishing.
fishing.
Yeah, a bit of
Yeah, yeah.
fishing. But
I'd maybe give that a crack, but I would let them. I would release them
let them go.
after.
Yeah, no, fair enough, man, fair enough. Like, um, but I'm trying to. I actually don't have anything else to say.
No, me neither.
I'd love to
No,
hear your rating, buddy.
Well, I don't think there's anything objectively bad in this film other than, them not properly balancing the setting and the characterization. They just have Americans
It's a
in
bit
Australia saying, "Oh, crikey,
crocky,
we're
mate.
Australians."
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm so convinced, lads. By the way, that was not me doing an Australian accent. That was me doing an American doing an Australian accent. So that's
fair.
why it was shit. If the quality is called into question, that's why. Uh, so there's not anything objectively bad in this film, but obviously the film does not keep the attention of the audience, uh, and that there's nothing really noteworthy or impressive about this film. I think it is a step down in quality from the original, despite the increase in quality of animation. So I would give the film 7 out of 10.
Fair enough, buddy. I was a great, concise way of putting it there, to be honest with you. And for me, I think this film really interesting setting, although a poor execution, very fast pace. And I thought the last 15 minutes was pretty great, and a happy ending. And obviously, like we mentioned, buddy, the Bernard and Bianca romance is fantastic. So I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah,
Certainly.
I don't know what happened in the last 15 minutes. I know the solid I saw like the first 20 minutes and then like the last five.
Yeah, I was just
The,
working on thumbnails.
the
I'm not
bits in
sure I know
between.
either.
Yeah, no, the bits in between are a bit murky.
Oh man, but listen, man, the next film, I suppose, I actually don't know what the next film is. I want to say Beauty and the Beast.
It is Beauty and the Beast.
Okay, awesome. And
So this
you
is a
go
very
for it, man. Yeah,
interesting
you go
film.
for it.
This is a very interesting film because I feel like I'm going to give it a lot of grief, and I feel like you'll probably disagree.
I did quite like it.
I have a balance of morality on this film that we will absolutely get
Oh no,
into,
yeah, yeah,
but we can talk about it just from the start. The film opens with this extended narration about the origin of the prince, and I think that only these films that deal with storybook fairy tales, are a place where animation works. I think it's the only exception to the idea of like show don't tell, because this is while this film isn't, I don't think, set or based on a fairy tale. I think that this is original content for once. It feels like a storybook, so it seems actually appropriate to have that narration here.
No, that's a great point, man. In many ways, this film it sort of feels like Disney are harking back to the old days of fairy tale stories with like Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella and films like that. And I thought it worked. And imagine, because we're watching these films in like weeks apart, I'd imagine that it would feel very different if you were a Disney fan in the 60s or 50s and watched Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, and then in the 90s comes along and there's a very similar story. I'd imagine that would be a nice payoff of like 30 years waiting for another fairy tale story. But no, I thought it was interesting. And it's interesting that it's an original concept as well. And but there is a lot of these. I don't want to be too harsh on it because I actually love this movie, but it's not as good as I thought, because I hear a lot of people say this is like one of the best Disney films, one of the best animated films of all time. It's not as good as I thought it would be. So
I think it's better than I expected, just because I knew exactly what I was getting into, and I had critiques before I even started to watch the film,
fair enough.
which
Yeah.
we will see throughout. But I just wanted to ask you, we have the character of the Beast, which is the co-lead of the film, and we're told very early on that he was turned into this monster because he refused this old woman, he refused to let her come into his castle to stay, and she takes that as him being so vain that he doesn't accept those that aren't outwardly beautiful. But it seems pretty okay to me to refute a stranger coming into your house, especially if you're a monarch who would naturally be on edge because it was just cool to murder kings and
Yeah.
queens and usurp their
It's a great
position back
point.
in the
It's a
day.
great point. Yeah, I think if maybe the film sort of opened with, okay, the prince rejects the woman, the woman with the rose at the start, but then like a pretty young woman comes along and he accepts her, and that would maybe make it more evident that he was more sort of focused on the looks aspect of things. But no, like you said, when it's just one woman who comes, you probably wouldn't really. Well, it depends, I suppose. Like for him, I get that they're trying to characterize him as quite a selfish character, and throughout the film, he sort of seems like and I get he's been turned into a monster and a beast, but he kind of seems really needlessly aggressive throughout the film. Like he doesn't seem. I didn't really side with him really at all until maybe the last half an hour or so. To be honest, there was no real sympathy I had for him. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly how many years he's been enchanted to be this beast. But I mean, if Belle is, I believe it said, the flower bloomed up until his 21st birthday, and then when he turned 21, it started to slowly wilt. So he's
Hmm.
presumably only been this beast for like 6, 7 years, somewhere in that realm, because then he's at the end of the film returned to sort of a young-looking man, which I assume is his, aged up version since he was turned. So he hasn't been living this persona for very long. And he's had like, all of his staff who are infinitely worse off than him. They did literally nothing wrong. And
That's
like
what I
some of
said
them
in my notes. Yeah, I feel bad for
are,
all the
have,
staff who got turned
yeah,
into
I mean,
household
they're being like
objects.
eternally tortured. And, he keeps, they're relying on him, to romance a woman. And every time he tries with Belle, he massively fucks it up, and he never takes into account the fact that he has to do it for himself and other people. He says, "Oh, I let Belle go because I love her," and then I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not only your life that's riding on this."
Yeah, no, I the same. I really do feel bad for all the staff who got turned into household objects just because the prince was a bit of a jerk, to be honest, at the start of the film. And the film sort of, I thought the sort of the old woman at the start with magical abilities, I thought she would have been brought back later in the film, but she's never seen again. And it's such a weird, like, it was such a weird thing to include. I think, to be honest with you, I thought maybe she was going to be like Belle's mother or something like that, considering she's never seen. But I don't know.
Yeah, they do pick up on that, and that is a part of the film. The 2017 live action film, because in this film at the end, Belle saying "I love you" to Beast, lifts the curse without her even having to kiss him.
Mhm.
That doesn't really make sense because that's not part of the rules. But if the enchantress was there to lift the spell herself after realizing the Belle loves him, that would have made more sense. And I think that is what happens in the 2017 film.
Fair.
And Matthew, we've been talking a lot recently about the quality of the songs in these films because they've been gradually improving. But the opening number of this film, Belle, is methodically more pleasant than the terrible Disney songs of the past. But I would say lyrically as poor. It is
I
kind of
agree.
just
I
the
agree,
it
actually.
is kind of just the same thing. Like, yeah, she walks around, she reads her books, she's hot, she's Belle. Like those
Yeah.
are the lyrics.
You know what it is,
It's
buddy?
just
It's, like we said in Little Mermaid, like those are really good songs. Like Under the Sea would stand on its own as a song, whereas I think the opening number in this, while it is my favorite in the entire film, it's like a person speaking in sentences but with a tune in the background. You know what it is,
yeah.
like lyricism or anything like that. And I think that's pretty integral part of a musical like this pretty much is. There's a lot of music here, and I think this is maybe a backward step from Little Mermaid in my opinion. I think it really kicks in a high gear with Lion King and Aladdin, but for me, bit of a backward step. I don't know if that's a hot take or not.
Musically, I would definitely agree. Quality wise, I would say this is nearly on par with The Little Mermaid, but
Yeah,
definitely
yeah, I
musically,
agree.
it's a big step down. Because when you're just singing a song about like the monotony of life, you've got to realize that that's monotonous and boring for the person who has to listen to the song.
It's such a great point.
It's
That's a great point.
it's
Yeah.
so shit. And we talked about the fact that the staff were also enchanted and turned into household objects, and I do think drinking from a human child cup seems a bit fucked.
That is where it's a sentient object that you're drinking from. It's
Matthew, did I just peek a liter bottle of Coke that you were drinking
You
from?
did indeed. I haven't drunk this all, don't worry. But no, I agree. It kind of got me thinking when all the household objects get turned into real life humans again. It kind of made me wonder, like, what if someone was like drinking from the cup or like was inside the wardrobe? How weird would that be?
Yeah, it's kind of the idea of like with Transformers, where the people are driving Bumblebee, and it's like surely that's his internal organs.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. We'll get into that when we review Transformers one day.
Yeah. And Matthew, you've talked about sort of the needless aggression of Beast. And, I just, on a similar note, I wanted to ask you, why do you think he asked her to stay there forever upon first meeting her? Like, do you think he was that insanely confident that he would be able to woo her? Because, he
Yeah.
really didn't seem happy to have her there. And I don't know why, like in his mind, trading a prisoner for a prisoner is fair. If you're that enraged that Belle's dad trespassed, you punishing his daughter is pretty useless.
It's a great point, buddy. It's a great point. And, you know, the whole prisoner dynamic, although interesting, it kind of made me wonder, like, is it just Stockholm syndrome? Like, has she just fallen in love with her
100%.
kidnapper?
100%. Yeah, I've so much on that. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely talk about that right now.
Go for it, dude.
What even is there that's appealing about Beast? Like the message of the film tries to be you have to look within to see beauty, but there's nothing beautiful about him. I feel like if he was Belle's intellectual equal, there could be something there. But really, the most grand romantic gesture we see is that he takes his like they shows his prisoner a room in the house that already exists and goes, yeah, here's your library. I mean, because
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time sort of did a thing with this, where they have the character of Rumpelstiltskin, but they gave him multiple roles. So he had this sort of like crocodile skin, so he looked like a monster. So the character of Rumpelstiltskin was Rumpelstiltskin from folklore. He was also the crocodile from Peter Pan, and he was
Okay.
also the beast from Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
So he had this whole like through line where he had all these romances and all this. Like he probably had the richest, deepest story of anyone on that show, and he was probably by far the best part of it. But he sort of commissioned this library for Belle, but it really just seems that you know this is pitched as like a grand romantic gesture, but he's literally just showing her another room in the house that she's imprisoned in. Like it's nothing impressive, is it?
Yeah. See, I do think Beast he is quite sweet in this in some instances, but like I said, I think he's very aggressive and stuff, and it kind of made me think like, for a second, like he nearly like hits her and he nearly kills her for goodness sake, when he's like trying to destroy all the furniture, which could be members of his own staff, by the way. So like,
Yeah.
it's a bit concerning. I'm like, I don't know. Even for a kid, I would say if I watched this when I was like 6 years old, I would be absolutely like terrified of Beast, just because a lot of just him in the screen is like it's either like a quick cut to him growling or something, or him just like attacking everything in sight. Like I don't think he's a very compelling character as I thought he would be, and it kind of annoyed me when they changed his voice actor from when he was a Beast to when he was a man, because I thought Robbie Benson as the original Beast was fantastic. I thought his voice is really great.
Yeah, he was actually able to, sort of show the humanity despite the visuals.
Hmm.
But honestly, in this film, the film wants you to view Gaston as the villain. But I think that very clearly they would just be best mates. If they met under any other circumstances, they seem to have like the same temperament and the same attitude to women. You can just like trap them in a relationship
Yeah,
and they'll love
Gaston.
you eventually. But it's just that it happens to work out for Beast. Like, what is the difference between him and Gaston? Like, they seem exactly the same to me.
Gaston, he is the maybe the worst flirt in history. He just throws Belle's book into the mud and says, "How could you read this? There's no pictures." Like, what a guy! What a guy!
And then he's just like, she wants me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have you ever seen
yeah,
Underdog, by the way?
I have, yeah.
Do you know the villain in that film? He kind of looks like him, I think. Like,
I'll give that a wee Google afterwards, but yeah, I don't really recall. I didn't commit that film to memory as much as I should have, clearly.
well, it's a good film. It's a good film, Underdog. I'm a big fan.
But I would say that culturally the two biggest, or at least the two most well regarded songs within this film are Gaston and Be Our Guest. And honestly, I was quite underwhelmed by Gaston, but Be Our Guest I think is great despite not being as lively as I expected.
Hmm. No, I 100% agree with you, but I 100% agree. And I think the film, although we've criticized the lyricism in some of the songs, I think the script is actually fantastic. The talking furniture is such a great idea, I think, and it's been sort of recreated in a lot of other films. Like, this film is very similar to Shrek 2, in my opinion. With in that scene where like the fairy godmother recreates all the talking furniture with Fiona. And also, there's a lot ripped off, I suppose, from the Shrek films in the ending of this, especially Shrek 4, now I think about it. But one thing I wanted to mention to you, buddy, is like, I thought we've sort of talked before about like the color and the costumes behind like Disney princesses. Like, Cinderella really is the blue is like iconic to her character, and then we sort of like criticize how Sleeping Beauty, like a lot of that film, she is in blue, whereas for us, she felt like pink was the more natural color. And for this, I
Yeah,
thought,
and it was
yeah.
marketed with pink, and then we were sort of taken aback when we actually watched it.
Exactly, exactly. But for this, I think yellow really suits Belle, because she actually is just generally like a really lovely person. Like, for the yellow, like, brings to mind like happiness and stuff like that. And a lot of people in towns, like, yeah, she's Belle, she's beautiful, but she's also weird. She's not like all the other women, which confused me, because she seems to be different is that she's ostracized by society because of her father is a crazy inventor apparently, but some of his inventions seem pretty successful, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's in part that, but also just the fact that she's smarter than all the men in the town, and they're
Hmm.
sort of they're not supportive of intelligent women,
Yeah, yeah,
in the town, and they were sort of more accepting and expecting, the people who would just like fawn over Gaston,
sure.
and he sort of saw Belle as, I suppose, a sort of challenge, because she was the only woman that didn't,
Hmm.
just instantly fall in love with him. So he sort of
Yeah.
that was the person that he gravitated towards. But as I said, I don't think he treats Belle any worse than Beast does. Honestly, I mean, at least he wants to imprison her in a relationship. But, he at least wants that to be consensual. Because he asks to marry her, she says no, he kicks her out.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a natural order of things there where he doesn't accept it, but he still asked her, whereas Beast imprisons her, and then she falls in love with him.
Mm,
So I think
sure.
it's a much worse ending to the film that she ends up with Beast. I think she should have seen that she deserved better than both of them. Uh,
It's a great
and
point, man.
the film ends with Gaston attacking Beast and stabbing him, and ultimately sort of killing him, and then he's resurrected when he's changed. But he's attacked by an entire pack of wolves earlier in the film, and a light stabbing is what does him in.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if anything, the wolves should absolutely tear him to shreds.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, if you were stabbed in the calf, like you'd be pretty disappointed in the human body if that like
Killed
if
you.
that killed you.
Exactly, disappointed in the human body. Oh, I love that. I love that phrase. But yeah, you would be. You would be. For sure,
And
man.
I've shat on this film quite a bit, but I have to say that I do think that it has the best visuals and score of any Disney film up to this point. But I do have to say it clearly has the worst message.
Mm,
I would say the Little Mermaid did a little bit of this, where she had to sort of change herself and commit to Eric's life in order to marry him. But here, just there's nothing sweet about Stockholm syndrome, as you said, and it's a classic case. She was clearly in that castle for months, and where she was just slowly worn down, until she finally relented and fell in love with him.
yeah. No, I agree, man. I agree with everything you've said there, buddy. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. You've smashed it. Yeah.
I mean, do you think the fact that that they're operating on like magical rules, and that she has to fall in love with him in a true love sense in order to break the spell? Do you
Sure.
think that excuses it? Because that means that in her, like, it's not just her brain's been affected, her heart, in
Yeah,
relation to the
no,
magic,
I can get that.
also
I
feels for
definitely
him.
think that's the film's message, but I don't think it conveys enough throughout the film to support that. To be honest, I don't get me wrong. I do believe that that's obviously Belle's true feelings, but I don't think the film explored enough of that because Belle and Beast only get along for maybe like a 10-minute montage of them throwing snowballs at each other. That's all they get along
Yeah,
for.
yeah, and I do think that the film means that if they had met in isolation without all of these factors, they would have fallen in love regardless. But it's the beginning of the relationship that I have a huge issue with, which
I agree.
leads to
I agree. Oh yeah.
the whole cause of it being toxic.
Hmm.
Did you have anything else on the film, Matthew?
Nothing for me, buddy. If you've got nothing else, I'd love to hear your rating for this one, dude.
So on a very base level, I think the film is sweet and romantic, but when you take the imprisonment into account, it removes a lot of that warmth. And most of the male characters seem like absolute garbage. I don't think there's any male lead except for maybe Belle's dad that we can empathize with in any manner. The Beast, I think, is just a terrible person. I think he is a worse person by the end of the film than he was, at the start of the film. Uh, I think it gets progressively worse because I don't think refusing a stranger to come into your home is anything to be criticized. I think that's a perfectly natural response. Uh, but taking someone in unwillingly and keeping the prisoner is something to be criticized.
Mm.
So we've talked about the fact that this is musically a big improvement on some of the Disney films, but a bit of a step down from The Little Mermaid. And I would say that around half the songs are unnoteworthy but not bad, and half are absolute bops, like "Be Our Guest." I really did enjoy that song. So if we remove sort of the toxic element of the relationship and just balance it with the quality of the film and my enjoyment of the film, I would give the film a 9 out of 10.
That's fantastic, but I think that was you've smashed it there, Callum, as always, dude. And yeah, for me, I think Belle, she's a fantastic lead. She's incredible. She's right up there with in my opinion. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and of course Ariel in Little Mermaid. So I think she's fantastic. I think the animation and the score is fantastic as well. Although we've criticized the lyricism in some of the songs, generally they have a good beat and they have a good melody. So for that, spot on. I think, like you said, perfectly, like the base layer dynamic. If you take it on a base level, it's a very sweet romance and a great message. But look behind that message, it's quite. And I'm probably being a bit too analytical on it here, but you know, I think once you look at it on a deeper level, it is quite concerning, and with the whole Stockholm syndrome debate. So for that, I'd have to agree with you. I give it a 9 out of 10 as well. It wasn't as good as I was expecting. I was expecting like masterpiece, sort of like 10 out of 10, but no, still great, still fantastic. 9 out of 10.
And now that we're going to move on to a film that I do think you will give a 10 out of 10, because you told me how much you enjoyed this last night when we saw each other. This is not a film I'd seen before. You said as well you hadn't seen this. And I think the first thing that we need to discuss is that normally we talk about the embarrassing accents or lack thereof in these films,
Sure.
and the fact that they don't have appropriate voice actors for the right region. And here I think that is the biggest issue. But the fact is that this is an issue of representation rather than just accent. And that is an issue that I think puts a bit of a black mark on this film, that they don't have the correct representation, because I don't understand why you would commit to setting somewhere in a region that you're not gonna have appropriate actors to represent.
I agree. I agree completely. I think the white man voicing a lot. I don't want to say that white man as if it's like, you know what I mean? Like the white. I use that the white man as like the metaphor of the white man, like the white man voicing these sort of characters from the Middle East. It's very. It's not. It hasn't aged well, and it's just not right in my opinion. And I think that being said, I think the voice work is excellent, but it doesn't. When you look behind that, it doesn't sit right with me, to be honest with you, mate. And I'm don't get me wrong, I'm really glad for the live action film they decided to go for an actor from Asia, from the Middle East. So that's great. Like I'm glad they didn't go with a white actor there. But no, for me, I agree. Like this is a sort of a different issue from like you said, mate, about our criticism of accent work. This is more of a criticism of the ethnicity behind these voice actors and stuff, and how culturally it might be seen as insensitive.
Yeah, it's definitely insensitive, but I don't think it's not trying to make a racist stand, in the
No,
sense that
I
Gone with
would
the
agree
Wind
with
did.
that. Like he doesn't do
I think
at
it's
least.
yeah, I think it's misjudged. But I don't think it's not Apu from The Simpsons, as
Yes.
that was sort of the comparison that we made the other day when we were speaking about this off pod. It's definitely a misjudged casting decision. But I don't think it's outright offensive.
No, I would agree with
I
you on
think
that
it's
one, yeah.
just it's just a mistake. But I think that we sort of need to separate that
Sure.
for today, just to talk about the quality of the filmmaking, the
Absolutely.
animation. But we'll set aside the voice acting, because going into this that we're not in support of that. But we talk about the start of the narrative of the film, and the film opens with this merchant character who is talking in flashback about this entire film whilst he's trying to sell this lamp. Which, I mean, by the end of the film, we know that the lamp is absolutely useless because there's no genie in there.
Yeah.
So I don't know why anyone would want to pick up that piece of shit. But I really wouldn't have known if I hadn't been told that the merchant was actually Robin Williams and that this character is actually the genie. I don't know
I
if
didn't know
you
that.
are aware
I
of
did
this.
not know that.
So, like, do you remember the character of the merchant from the beginning of the film, though?
I'll have a wee look at him on Google. I don't recall it because when I think of Robin Williams, I just think of the genie. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
Michael, that is
Okay. So
that's probably some of the best voice work ever. But I'll have yes, I recall the character now. I've just seen him on my screen.
yes. So
Yeah.
the film opens with this character of the merchant, trying to sell the lamp that the genie had once existed in, and the character is also voiced by Robin Williams. So this created a fan theory that the genie and the merchant were the same person, and it has since been revealed by the Disney executives that there were scenes cut that answered that question and outright established that that is the truth. So when you go into this film, that character is actually the genie in
Oh,
disguise.
cool. I love that, man. That's such a great wee twist there. I like that. And I suppose if we're mentioning Robin Williams now, I think this is some of the best voice work of all time. And in my opinion, this is the best animated film so far that we've reviewed. I think the animation just on the genie is just fucking incredible. It's just fantastic in my opinion.
Yeah, I really agree. The animation definitely, the voice acting. But I want to ask you about the character himself. Do you find the character, because I think there are definitely going to be two definitive camps. Do you find the character funny or annoying?
I find him really funny, but I can definitely see why people find him annoying. I really find him hilarious.
Yeah, for me, all the jokes felt flat, but I didn't objectively hate the character. I was just sort of, this is a character. He's adding to the plot. He's clearly a big part, but the jokes that fuck my life, the jokes that they're clearly trying to tell that are intended to you
Hmm.
know they're intended to get laughs are just falling flat for me.
No, that's fair enough, man. That's fair enough. And we've mentioned sort of color on these ones before. Now we mentioned it with Belle and Beauty and the Beast, and I think this film has such a beautiful purple color scheme, which is fantastic. And we've mentioned songs as well. This film has some of my favorite songs that we've reviewed so far. Arabian Nights and One Jump Ahead is personally my personal favorite, but they are just absolute classics, man. They're so good.
Yeah, there are a couple that I've heard a lot about and that I expected to enjoy, which are Arabian Nights and uh, what's the actual name of the I Will Show You the World. Uh,
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm a fake
oh
fan.
fuck, it's called A Whole New World. That's another one that I had heard was really important. But one I had never heard was Prince Ali, which I think is the highlight of the film,
Yeah, that's
which
a
is
good one
where
as well, actually.
they
Yeah.
march Aladdin into the city. And I've since watched the clip with Will Smith doing it in the 2019 film, and it's actually even better. It's actually an improvement on this film somehow. I think that'll probably be the highlight of that film once we talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but something that we haven't mentioned just yet is the character of Jafar, who is the villain of the film. And I have to say, I don't really understand his plan because I think he's needlessly manipulative. Because in the end, his goal is power. He wants to be more powerful than the Sultan. And I get that the more malevolent he is, the less power he has to share. He's very clearly the villain of the film, so he needs an evil scheme. But I just wish that for once one of these villains were just smart businessmen that strike a deal where everybody comes out happy. Because if he had just approached Aladdin and said, "I can get you out of prison if you come to this temple, get me the lamp, and then you can steal whatever shit you want," that deal would have meant everyone be happy. He would be incredibly powerful. There would be no animosity between him and Aladdin. That this entire film wouldn't happen if Jafar was just a little bit smarter. And I think that just happens in every Disney film where they just really don't have a well thought out plan and
Yeah,
they're meant to
evil
be
for the sake of
geniuses.
being evil, kind of thing.
Yeah, because Matthew, if you wanted to like amass power and you wanted to get this genie's lamp, I mean, you would just and you needed someone else to help you, you would just strike up a deal and make sure that they walk away happy, so that
Yeah,
they have no
great
cause
point.
to come back and ruin your plan.
Yeah, that being said, man, I agree with you. But I thought Jafar was really incredible in the film. His plan, not so much, but I thought his design was fantastic. It rivals Cruella de Vil and Ursula from Little Mermaid, in my opinion. It's just fantastic. And to be honest with you, man, I think that the dynamic between all the characters in this film, they all blend so well. And the film, I think Aladdin is such an incredible protagonist as well, and I love his sort of dynamic with Princess Jasmine. It's such a beautiful romance there. It's so sweet.
Yeah, we can talk about that because Aladdin, liked Jasmine because when he first met her, she was humble, she was funny. So I feel like if he misjudged her so badly as to think that she would, like this
Yeah,
arrogant
I have the same
prince
point. Yeah,
act, maybe they're not that well matched. I
yeah.
feel like, he's nice, she's nice, and they're like, that's good enough. I
Mhm.
feel like that's what romance was. She doesn't want to marry like a gross prince that she doesn't like. So she meets a guy that seems kind of nice, but clearly they're not well matched.
Yeah, and I have a point written down here. Aladdin thinking Jasmine would prefer a prince is ridiculous, given how well they got on at the start of the film when he was just being himself.
Yeah, And I really don't think it recovers itself by the end, because he says, "I'm sorry, I lied," and she says, "I understand why you did." I don't really, because I mean, the fact that the reason he likes her is because she saw past all of that bureaucratic bullshit. So I kind of have no understanding as to why he would do that. I know that it was written in the law that he needed to be a prince in order to marry her, but I mean, I don't know why he couldn't just date her, for a little bit, and then work something out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. And we've talked before about like deep themes in Disney films, and I think arranged marriage it's certainly a deep and dark subject matter, to be honest, because that sort of shit still does happen throughout the world, and it is quite sad because I think Jasmine's quite an empowering female protagonist, really, to be honest with you, dude. And it kind of got me thinking, like the whole idea of the three wishes. And I have a question for you. What would, from a purely selfish standpoint, so like you can't wish for like any of your friends or family to be happy or anything like that. From a certain selfish standpoint, what would your three wishes be?
See, I don't know about three. I have worked out the exact wording of one perfect wish.
Go for it. Go
Because
for it.
people say like, oh, I want unlimited money, or I want, I want this, I want that. I think they're
Sure.
always so vague. What I would say is, uh, anytime I wish to purchase something, I wish that I had the exact right amount of money on my debit card or in my pocket. So
That's a
so
good
then
one.
you don't have to like, if you say I want unlimited money, then you have to like sort of like go through your infinite stacks of money, keep them somewhere, find the right amount. But if you're like, I want to buy that Lamborghini, reach in the pocket, you just have a
It's
check
there.
that has
Yeah, yeah.
500K written on it.
Sure.
I think that's the best to work out. But I would never wish for something that like that over you know sorting out world peace or world hunger or something. I would obviously go for those before, but you did say on a purely selfish standpoint. But I'm wondering what you would say,
From a purely selfish standpoint, oh, that's a good
because
one.
you don't really do selfish, Matthew. That's not a thing that crosses your mind.
Oh, I do selfish. What would be my selfish way? I suppose selfish standpoint. Um, definitely like million subscribers on the YouTube channel.
Really? Because
Yeah,
there's sort of one side where I would never want to wish for an accomplishment, because then I would just never feel like I earned it,
yeah,
or I would
that's a good
never,
point.
or I would never wish for a relationship, because I would never feel they actually loved me, which is actually the only that's really the only point of a relationship, to feel loved and accepted. And
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't actually earned that, well, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like fuck my life. Yeah, there's a wee bit of editing to do on this episode where I just cease being able to speak. But yeah, I wouldn't wish for an accomplishment either.
I would say another. Like to meet like I said, I think we covered this in like getting to know like our ideal dinners, like to have the ideal dinner with like yourself, Greta Norton, Chris Evans, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. That would be my second wish, and then third wish is um,
Well,
I don't
the
know.
thing I said about relationships is sort of, I wouldn't want to say, oh, I like this person, make them love me, because that's horrible, because then that's sort of the entrapment that
Yeah,
we're aware of with like Beauty and the Beast. But if you
sure.
said, if you said like, I wish to know who hypothetically would be the one for me, then you can just pursue that relationship and it can grow naturally. And they have loved you normally, but you just have the knowledge of who that is.
Hmm.
And then there's been no actual interference in how they feel about you. It's just that you're aware that that is the person that you're meant to be with.
Yeah, that would be. See, I would go for that third one, but then it kind of makes me think like, would that fuck it up? Me already knowing, whereas I met them fresh, I wouldn't know that they'd be the one. But if I met them like knowing
Yeah,
that
it's
they'd be
it's
the
not
one,
the ideal.
yeah. Okay, I'll go for a third one. Um, know if God exists or if the meaning of life or something like that. I think that'll be a cool one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would torture myself with that knowledge. I don't think. I think I would overanalyze literally everything I do, which I do already. But if I was like, oh, I do
Even
this
more.
tiny thing wrong, hell, it's not an ideal way to live. It's not something I'd go for. But
Yeah, no, fair enough, man.
definitely an admirable list. To go back to the character of Jafar, I think a much easier plan that he could have come up with because we can see that he can shapeshift. He could have killed the king, taken his place, appointed himself as the new sultan. I
Like
think
things
that's
are
much
already,
more.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a much
exactly.
more cut and dry thing where he has to kill less people. He has to do, it's much lower effort.
Yeah, no, I agree. Jafar's plan is definitely misplaced, I think, for sure. And like that, yeah, like it's weird because he has the power of mind control in the gem in his staff, so he could clearly he could not just say to the king, he's already mind controlling the king anyway.
Yeah, you can just say abdicate the throne, make me the new sultan. It's quite easy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But hey, and one thing I wanted to mention about this film, buddy, like throughout, and maybe this is due to the Middle Eastern setting, and I suppose as well. But like, the film, even structurally and from a filmmaking standpoint, it kind of reminded me of like the old like Bible cartoons. If you get me, like Joseph King
Yeah,
of Dreams and films like that, it's a really similar vibe there. So very similar tone. I don't know if you got that.
yeah, those are other Middle Eastern movies with non-racially appropriate actors.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck either voiced Moses or Jesus or something because there's the Prince of Egypt with Moses, and then there's Joseph King of Dreams.
Hmm.
So I know Ben Affleck voiced one of those. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you that 100% a very similar tone. Did you have anything further on the film?
um. Well, a few things. Disney sort of there is a Pinocchio reference in here, and it feels a bit self-congratulatory from Disney. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been doing a fair bit of that in the last few films because they're sort of I think they've recognized that they're within their own renaissance, so they're sort of harking back to the classics in order to refamiliarize the new generation with it.
yeah, and I've got nothing else for me, buddy. But so if you've got nothing else, Callum, I'd love to hear your rating for this one.
So I think the film could easily have had better representation, and I don't really know that I believe that Aladdin was the diamond in the rough. I think he is kind of a sneaky piece of shit in parts.
Yeah,
I think if someone was truly sort of pure of heart, they wouldn't have really questioned, the fact that they should set the genie free. I don't think that really should have been under question. So I think they sort of pitch him as this character pure of heart. I don't really see that. Uh, and I think the music is mostly is the most consistently amazing of any Disney film up to this point. And Jasmine is probably my favorite of the Disney princesses, probably tied with Belle and Ariel, I would say. Uh,
I
I,
respect
I
that.
would say
Yeah, yeah.
probably Jasmine is at the top. So I would give the film a 9.5 out of 10.
Love that, Callum. Love that, mate. And for me, I think this is film. It's such a great sort of case study of like that sort of culture, Middle Eastern culture. It's something I wasn't too I didn't know much about, to be honest. I still don't know much about. I'd love to visit the Middle East, and this is such a great. I think this is such a great like gem of a movie. Like no pun intended with the themes there, but this is fantastic. I think Aladdin, great protagonist. Jasmine, as you said, fantastic as well. Jafar, amazing design, and Robin Williams as Genie is one of the best castings of all time, in my opinion. It's fantastic. And for me, I just absolutely adore this movie. I love it. It's a 10 out of 10. Love it.
Of course it is.
And
Thoroughly unsurprised with that.
yeah, and the next film, which is also probably, I would argue, The Lion King is probably considered the best Disney movie. I would argue, but I don't know. What do you think of that
I would
one?
say widely it is. Yeah, probably the most highly regarded classic Disney film is Fantasia for whatever reason, and we sat through that fucking
How did we do
atrocity.
that, mate? How the
Uh,
fuck did we do that?
I don't know. I mean, there's probably been three that there's probably been a few like huge low points, like in the start, middle, and end of like Disney's filmography.
Mm,
Definitely, Fantasia is the worst of like the start of Disney. The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, worst of the middle,
best
worst
what?
of the recent ones. Nah, but worst of the recent ones. I don't
Are you
know.
going for
I
Lion
feel
King?
like
Are you
no,
going for?
no, that's
Oh, no.
definitely not.
Okay,
That's
I
not
thought
what
you
I'm
were
saying.
setting
No,
up
no,
to go for Lion
no.
King.
I'm thinking. I'm not optimistic for like Pocahontas, which we're talking about in the next episode. I'm not optimistic about that, but we'll assess when we see that.
I'm trying to think of the worst recent film that we've talked about. I'll have a wee look here. I would say, oh, I don't know. Let me have a wee look. So Disney Part 7 was Little Mermaid, Great Mouse Detective, Black Cauldron, and Oliver and Company. Solid. Disney
That
Parts
was a good episode.
Disney Part 6, Robin Hood, Fox and the Hound, The Rescuers, and Winnie the Pooh. And then Disney Part 5 was probably their first sort of recent one, which is like Dalmatians, Jungle Book, and Aristocats. Aristocats was absolute dog shit in my opinion. I really didn't like it.
Oh, I quite like the Aristocats, but the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, absolutely
Fair.
in the
No, I
toilet
respect
where it
that. I
belongs.
respect that, mate. I respect that. So, Lion King then. Did you enjoy it?
Lion King. This film was actually produced by Disney's animation B team.
Wow.
The A team of the Disney animators was working on Pocahontas, which came out shortly after, and we'll be talking about sometime next week. Uh, so that film was sort of Disney's priority because they thought that was the moneymaker. So this film was sort of produced on the cheap. They didn't have high
Mm,
expectations of it. And then when they released sort of the opening sequence of the Circle of Life as the trailer for the film, uh, you know that received such high praise that
mm.
they pushed this film marketing wise and
Understandably.
made an absolute shit ton of money. Uh, and I think that opening sequence is probably the best world and tone establishing Disney musical opening that we've seen so far.
I would argue it's probably one of the best film openings of all time that I've certainly seen. I don't like using that phrase when I say it, like of all time, because it makes me sound like I've watched every single film. Obviously, that's impossible. It's an
Yeah,
impossible. It's an impossible sentence to say unless you've seen every movie of all time. So it's the best,
yeah,
one of the best cinematic openings I've certainly seen. Just the opening's like Sabenya. It's very quotable. This
yeah.
film, if I could describe it in one word, it would be very quotable. Like there's a lot of iconic lines here, like and songs for that matter.
Yeah, I would say that musically, like if we're talking about the opening of a musical film, I would say that Hamilton, with
Yeah,
Alexander
that's a good
Hamilton, is
shout.
probably my
That's a good
favorite
shout.
musical opening of all time. Favorite movie opening? What's your favorite? Mine would probably be Watchmen, with
It's a
sort
good
of that
shout.
that sequence set to Bob Dylan's "The Times They Are Changing."
Mine would be either I don't want to be cliche, but I really like the Dark Knight opening, and it's
I was
something
gonna say it is. I don't even love The Dark Knight, and we'll talk about The Dark Knight with our friend Jack, which will hopefully be a very very extended episode that
absolutely
you guys can
long
watch
one.
in multiple parts probably. But I have to say I don't love that film, but the opening is one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I quite like what else? I'll have a wee look at the wee DVD collection here, see if anything springs to mind. I ordered Chef on DVD the other day, man.
Oh, excellent
So
idea.
had to, man. I'll have a wee look here. Da, 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 da. I quite like the opening for. Nothing's springing to mind. Nothing's springing to mind. Okay, right. I quite like the opening for I quite like the opening for Endgame because we mentioned that in our review. It's quite haunting seeing it from someone else's perspective. So I quite like the the opening to Avengers Endgame, just because from Hawkeye's perspective and stuff like that. But no, probably The Dark Knight probably claims that for me. But Watchmen's a fantastic shout.
Yeah, and I did really appreciate the opening here, and I think it really sets the tone. So Matthew, I really like how distinct these films are today, and I would say that this is the most different because it really focuses on the royalty side of the characters within the film. Because we talk a lot about Disney princes, Disney princesses, but really that's sort of a very casual part of their character,
Mm,
whereas the character of Simba is the Lion King, and the
true.
monarchy is very important to this film. And very clearly, my opinions on the royal family are not positive. I think royal families are bullshit anyway. But the way that they work is even more bizarre. That the firstborn of the firstborn is the monarch, rather than just the person who will be best at the job, the best leader.
It's a great
So
point.
really, I don't. I'm sure that often the firstborn just simply isn't fit. So Scar's methods are obviously condemnable within this film, but I really don't think that his rage at not being king is misplaced. I think that he's right to be angry about that.
Yeah. And on the subject of Scarman, Jeremy Irons does a fantastic job, doesn't he?
Yeah, once again, we have to talk about the representation issue that this, film is set in the African
And
savannah,
it has a lot of
and
white actors.
it's a lot of white actors, which was then, thankfully amended, similar to Aladdin with the live action remake, with the character of Jeremy Irons, Scar, being played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. So I think that's a very great recast.
I
But
agree.
yes, aside from the representational issues, he does an incredible job.
I agree with you, man. And one thing about this film, I think they nailed the animation of the animals. They're a combination of like realistic yet cartoonish. Sorry, yeah, realistic yet cartoonish. Like I think in films like Madagascar, I think those films they look too humanized. to the, that's, I think the Alex the lion meets, Simba. I think Simba, obviously the hand drawn versus CGI is quite a difficult comparison to make, but I think if you look at that, Simba looks more like a traditional lion, yet adheres to that classic sort of. You could tell he's the hero, if you get me. Like, Scar is designed to look like the villain. Jafar and Aladdin, the villain. You get me. Where in this film, I think they absolutely smashed it, to be honest. And obviously the voice work, James Earl Jones as well, absolutely spectacular.
Matthew, I can't actually tell because the image is a bit grainy. Are you wearing a backwards snapback?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'd wanted to be. I'd wanted to debut that one day on the pod. But I didn't know whether it was a look that was going to be accepted. It's a brave look, Matthew.
I've got,
A brave
yeah, it's
look.
retro. It's very
Mm,
1990s hip hop.
yeah, American LA. You don't see that too much here. But you're absolutely pulling it off.
Thanks, buddy.
So much that I did not listen to anything you just said. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you about the sort of the realism with the lions. I think even the fact that Alex from Madagascar walks on legs rather than all fours. I think
Yeah,
that
that's a
even
good
takes
point.
takes
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
the animalistic element out of it.
yeah.
Yeah, and sort of weirdly, you talked about the humanization of the characters, even though they look like real animals. Well, I mean, as real as they're going to look in 2D animation. But weirdly, this is actually where I empathize most with every character. Because they have the most humanity, despite not particularly looking human-esque. And I especially think that's visible in Mufasa because we see what an incredible father and leader he is. Even though, I think a lot of the lessons that he imparts on Simba are great, but the one where he sort of allows Simba to assault Zazu, who's like a royal subordinate. I think that
Yeah.
sort of reeks of privilege. That you can commit like a violent act just because you're a royal.
That's a great point, Matt. That's a great point. And Mufasa's death, it definitely did crush me as a kid when I watched it, as I'm sure it did with many people. And that being said, he is in the movie for a lot of time as well. And the Simba character, like, I think, I think the film really conveys how, his evolution. Like, in many ways, this film is a coming of age story, I would argue. And the Simba Nala dynamic is incredible as well. But I agree with you. Like, Mufasa, it did sort of reek of privilege a little bit when he attacked Zazu.
And the voice actors here are for the most part incredible. But my one issue with it is that when we have Jonathan Taylor Thomas playing young Simba, and then another actor playing the voice, and then Matthew Broderick as an adult, and also another actor providing the singing voice, and that sort of baffled me in a movie that is for the most part a musical. And pretty much if you have musical talent, you're going to work as a voice actor, even though it may not work in reverse.
Sure.
If you're a voice actor, if you're a singer, you can be a voice actor. So I have no idea why they wouldn't just have the actors that they're having do the singing parts
Do the
be
voice.
the main
I
voice of the
agree. I
characters,
agree.
because I would say the biggest vocal performance within the film that gets the most criticism is Matthew Broderick as adult Simba. I don't have a single issue with him. I actually think he's great, but there is a large criticism around that character, and I feel like if you just committed to having that singer who did a fantastic job with the Hakuna Matata. I
What a
think that
wonderful
would have
phrase. Yeah. Hakuna
I think
Matata is
that
so
that
good.
would have I think that would have improved people's opinions of the film even strong
I
in
agree,
an even
buddy. I
stronger
agree. And
manner.
sometimes with voice actors, with singers, with voice acting, they sort of maybe try too hard to recapture the voice of the original voice actor. I think here it does work, but it's confusing. Like, there's a lot of voice actors just for one character there. But that being said, I think the music in this film is the best it's ever been for Disney. And Hakuna Matata was originally my favorite when I was younger, but in this one, it's actually, I just can't wait to be king. It's, in my opinion, it's so good. What's your favorite, mate?
Yeah, it's very lively, but I always like the villains are always my favorite part of these films. Ursula's song in The Little Mermaid, per unfortunate souls, I believe, and in this film, Be Prepared, I would have to say, which is Scar's, outrightly villainous
Hmm.
song. I would say that that's my favorite of the film.
Fair enough, buddy. Yeah, no, it's great. And the characters of Timon and Pumbaa, I want to hear your thoughts on them, because I think for a lot of people they could either be seen as very annoying or so charming, and they were always my favorite as a kid. I love them, and I still love them to this day. What's your thoughts on them, buddy?
I find they are for some reason, very big in pop culture. They're considered famous Disney characters, but I thought they were like very unnoteworthy side characters. I don't really see where the fame and recognition has come from. They seem like quite minor characters in the film.
Yeah, they're
I
not in
find them
it for
quite
a lot.
unnoteworthy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they've had
the
their own
only real
spin-offs as
yeah,
well.
there was the Lion King 1.5, which we'll talk about when we're talking about Disney Toon Studios. And we'll be talking about all the direct-to-video sequels when we talk about those films. But the only point that I actually made about them was actually just in reference to another character, which was the character of Nala, where we see her hunting Pumbaa, and I think that instantly made me dislike this adult version of Nala because I was like, uh, in a world where you can communicate with the things that you're hunting, you should not be hunting those animals.
No, it's a great point. That's a great point, man. And it's sort of weird to think that, yeah, in this film, the lions have to hunt these other animals that sort of, we see all the other animals like bow down to the lions and adhere to their rule over the kingdom. But it's sort of weird to think that, yeah, those animals all have to eat each other.
Yeah,
The
I
circle of
really
life, I
don't think
suppose.
I really don't think that if humans could communicate with animals, that I don't think anyone would eat meat.
I agree.
If there was a communication,
I agree.
and it just surprised me that in this animal kingdom, they can survive on other things. So I don't know why you would hunt something that you can communicate with, because that just seems like that would be a moral boundary. I think for humans.
hmm And this film, it kind of got me thinking about Black Panther and how much that film ripped off this film.
Yeah, I mean, this film itself is ripping off Hamlet anyway. So I
Oh yeah,
think and Black Panther, the story of that character goes all the way back to, I suppose, the '60s probably,
yeah.
or even perhaps before. And the Lion King just rips off several things. There's a character called Kimba the White Lion. So
Well,
they've
yeah,
stolen that and made it like Simba the Lion.
yeah.
Uh,
I didn't know that actually.
I don't know a lot about that character, but from what I've heard, that's just like this is a blatant rip off of that, and like pretty much Disney either rips off itself or other people and just reskins it to make it more family friendly, more appealing, so they can make more money.
Yeah, yeah. We've talked a lot before in the podcast, haven't we, buddy, about like Disney's. Is it the House of Ideas, as I think you put it in the last episode? Is
Mm.
it? Because we've talked a lot about it, and a lot of the things are just completely ripped, well, not ripped off, but a lot of them are like just other stories from other books or other tales. Do you
Yeah, there's 58 films in Disney, and I would say you'd struggle to name five, between 5 and 10
original
that
concepts?
are original content
Yeah.
exactly. Uh, you know, sort of away from that, I sort of just want to talk about the end of the film. Simba
Go for it,
returns
mate.
to Pride Rock, to reclaim his kingdom. He beats Scar, but Scar sort of becomes this like shell of himself. He's been known to be a maniacal, scheming, deadly villain, and then he becomes very feeble by the end. The fights that he has aren't very impressive. He sort of says, "Oh, I'm sorry, my king. Just let me be. Let me stay alive." There wasn't much fight
Yeah.
in him, even though he tries to get one over in Simba in the end, and fails. I would have just liked a bit more, uh, a bit more,
A bit more of an extravaganza.
yeah, staying true to his character, standing his ground, putting up a bit more of a fight before ultimately being finished off by the hyenas. I think that would have just been a bit more
It's a
fitting,
brutal way to
because
go.
yeah, then this is just another sort of pathetic villain in Disney.
Yeah, man. And I don't have anything else to say, really, buddy. Do you have anything else?
I don't. So Matthew, I'd love to hear your rating of the film.
Awesome, man. Well, as I said, I think this is the best musical film music wise so far. I think fantastic protagonist. And one thing I didn't really mention, I just love the cyclical nature of the movie. The movie ends with Simba's kid, and I think it's I like Narla, fantastic. Simba, obviously fantastic. And there's so many great side characters in this as well. We've mentioned Timon and Pumbaa, one of my favorites, and this is my favorite Disney music-wise film so far. So I'd have to give it I'd give it a 9.5. Yeah, I'll give it a 10. I'll bump it up to a 10. So
Oh wow,
what would you
you
give it,
were gonna
buddy?
give it a humble 9,
Humble 9.
humble 9.5.
Humble 9, but being a hero kind of bumps us up to that 10. If you know, you know. What would you give it, buddy?
I hope that any of that was audible. I hope that I assume because you're recording, provided it was okay on your end, things
Hopefully
should be
so.
fine.
Hopefully
Can you
so,
hear
man.
that like static crackling on my end?
I can't hear anything, buddy. I think you're all good.
Okay, it must just be through my earphones then. That should be an issue. So, I'd never seen this film, as I said, so I never thought that it was going to live up to the hype that I'd heard. But, in all honesty, it is really great. The film creates, as we both talked about, the most human animal characters that we've seen, which means I was actually able to empathize with the characters better than any animal-focused film that we've seen in Disney before. And I think the music and the visuals of the film are the peak of Disney to this point. So I would go with a 9.5 out of 10.
Buddy.
I don't know. I'm gonna bump it up to that 10. Actually, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna bump it up to that
you
10.
did it, Michael. I love it. I
So
love it,
I
man.
think that this is among, certainly for me, the top three at least, of Disney so far. I don't know if I'd put it at number one, but it's hovering around there certainly. Where
Yeah.
where would you say?
What would you rank? I'm interested to see like what would our favorite film that we've reviewed so far is, given we're at the halfway point. What would be your favorite?
There certainly is the Lion King. There's the Great Mouse Detective. There's the Rescuers. I loved Sleeping Beauty for whatever reason. I think I had such low expectations for films like that I was just really blown away. I've loved Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, and Beauty and the Beast. So my favorite of them, I would say The Lion King and The Little Mermaid would battle it out probably for my favorite. What about you?
Um, that's a good. I think Aladdin's definitely top two. Definitely top two. I'm gonna have a wee look here at old Disney notes that I've made just to see what actually films that we've talked about.
I know you've
Um,
given a 10 to The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. You've given 10 to The Lion King.
I really like Lady and the
Uh,
Tramp. I
you
really like
know,
that. I really liked it. Really liked it. I'm just looking back here. Fun and Fancy Free. Oh my god. Um,
I swear,
okay.
like there's definitely just a full episode of package films that was just the worst thing we've ever seen.
Yeah, Aladdin and Lady and the Tramp, probably my two favorite.
Fair shout.
But
So Matthew,
yeah,
now that we've talked about all the films for today, did you want to get onto a future episode chat?
let's do it, buddy. What podcasts are going to be coming next week?
So to celebrate the upcoming release of Bill and Ted Face the Music, we'll be talking about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. That should be the next podcast up. We'll also be doing a couple of mini reviews coming up. An American Pickle starring Seth Rogen and Project Power starring Jamie Foxx. We'll also be getting Cash on again. We had a great success and a really fun time recording when we had Cash on to talk about
Absolutely.
Kissing Booth 1 and 2. So stay tuned for the film that we're going to talk about. We're not going to tell you what it is, but we can assure you that it is a terrible
It's a
Netflix
classic. It's a
rom-com,
classic.
a classic that Matthew hasn't seen, unfortunately, but I have endured and will have to watch again to make notes, unfortunately. But stay tuned for that because we have a great time recording with Cash, and I would say that this film is much worse than either of the Kissing Booth films.
Oh, brilliant. And obviously, then the week after that, it'll probably be another Disney episode and then Planet of the Apes Part 3, finally capping that off, and then maybe the Godfather films as well in the
Yes,
next
we'll,
coming
we'll we'll
weeks.
see how fast we can get all that content pumped out. But those will definitely be that should definitely be the order of the films that we're talking about.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, thank you very much for introducing me to four more films today, buddy. Always a pleasure recording with you. Thank you to everyone who has watched this episode. As always, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below. And thanks very much, Callum. Thanks very much, everyone. Take care, and bye-bye.
Goodbye.